Hi, so this is Scott from South Florida Insider, and I'm here with
Jeff Burbank.
And tell me, what are we here at Mob Museum? I mean, this is as authentic as we're gonna get. The ground roots of the mob. I mean, they're the ones that essentially they built Vegas, right?
They built Vegas, and we decided to have a 1920s style speakeasy down here because the mob really became rich during Prohibition. Before that, they were involved in extortion and robberies and that kind of thing, but they really became multimillionaires during Prohibition. So that's a really important part of the mob story, explaining Prohibition.
And during the early days, I mean, there is nothing here. Is it kind of almost hard to imagine that they built this place in a desert? I mean, there's nothing here when they first found it. Wasn't it Bugsy and Meyer Lansky that kind of looked at it with when they went to go build the Flamingo?
Well, all right. The mob got rich during Prohibition and used the money after Prohibition to invest in Las Vegas. All right. So Las Vegas was really small potatoes because there weren't very many people here. But with the building of the Hoover Dam in 1935, there were a lot more workers coming here, a lot more tourists. And so things started to change in the late 30s. Then there was World War II. A couple of the first resorts opened in the mid 40s. And then Siegel came in to rescue a failing project called the Flamingo. And he had millions of dollars invested by Frank Costello, Meyer Lansky, and other East Coast mobsters. That's really where the resort age started.
So they were more the resort age, but not really the foundation of when, like Vegas, I guess, was grooming itself.
Well, you know, the Flamingo was really the first big, over-the-top luxury resort to come to Las Vegas. And Bugsy Siegel wanted to make it as fancy as possible. And he overspent by millions. And he really angered the mob. And he was very arrogant, and he said, well, to hell with you, I'm going to do what I want. And, you know, basically after they lost millions of dollars at first, they were just starting to recoup the money. But they already decided that he's got to go and we've got to have our own people in there, different people actually. So they brought in after he was assassinated, it was a mob hit, they brought in a new group of people to run the place. And it really became a big success. And it started a number of new resorts, the Desert Inn, the Sands, the Sahara, and then there actually, by the mid-50s, there were too many resorts built, and they started to fail.
So wasn't that kind of the thing, though, with the mob? I mean, they kind of jumped ship between, they were working with drugs, they were working with the entertainment industry for a while, they were coming over here. It always seemed like after a certain time, maybe they plateaued and they moved on to the next thing. Did this kind of always, even when they moved on, they never really did? Like, it was still that glamorous lifestyle, being able to hang out with the celebrities and stuff that kind of brought more attention to the mob, or?
Well, right, and the mob had their hidden interests in these different casinos, and so before the money was reported to tax officials, they would skim millions, and it would be sent back to the Midwest or to the East, right, this money. Also, you had, the mob was very much involved in the entertainment industry, from comedians to singers to just about everybody in entertainment, and because they controlled the nightclubs. And so, you know, you wanted to get on the nightclub circuit, you had to have some dealings with mobsters. So they were very much involved in the entertainment industry and the movie industry.
So here at this museum, what are some of the artifacts, not artifacts, but some of the things that we're going to be able to see here? Those people that are those history buffs that want to see this stuff. I mean, obviously there's quite a bit with Prohibition. Do you guys really take, what is it, the 5 families and really generate the history all throughout the museum?
We talk about the 5 families of New York, the members of the original commission put together by Charles Lucky Luciano in 1931. He was really the founder of modern organized crime in the United States, so we've got plenty on him and the five families. We also talk about international organized crime, especially what's going on today, the Mexican cartels, the Yakuza in Japan, the Camorra and the Ndrangheta in Italy, and also there's plenty of organized crime in Eastern Europe and Russia and throughout Europe and South America. So it's really an international phenomenon.
So definitely not a stateside thing, especially a lot of them are obviously coming over from wherever else they came from, other countries, before they came stateside to make their fortune.
Well, sure. I mean, there's Russian organized crime, Eastern Europe organized crime members on the East Coast, right? That's been true for quite some time now. The old Italian Jewish organized crime groups have been in decline for quite some time. They're not gone though, because as you can see, for instance, in New York, people from the Gambino crime family, Lucchese crime family are still being indicted on various crimes related to racketeering, but it's on a much smaller scale than it once was.
What year did this museum first debut?
We started in 2012. And within 5 years, we had our 1 millionth visitor.
Wow.
And so by the end of last year, we were expecting about 360,000 people visiting here.
And what's been kind of like the additions over the years and maybe what you guys are doing down the road?
Well, we've been adding to our exhibit collection, our artifacts. Lately, we've added 3 new interactive exhibits. One, it's the use of force, where you go in and you strap on a belt and you shoot a gun with CO2 cartridges at videos similar to what police go through for their training. That's use of force. You get to do that. We have a crime lab where you can learn some things about how autopsies are done, about how DNA is analyzed, about how fingerprints are analyzed, and also ballistics. And then we have an organized crime today exhibit, which is a large touch wall where you're able to touch and learn about international crime, organized crime. You can watch small videos, you can read texts about whatever you want to learn about organized crime in Asia, organized crime in Mexico, wherever.
So this isn't necessarily glorifying the mob, it's also showing what law enforcement did themselves to like maybe uncover all the different mob bosses and so forth, like you'll get in this museum.
Well, right, we're the National Museum of Organized Crime and Law Enforcement, so we're both, and we don't want to glorify the mob. We want to tell the mob story, which is very engaging and very interesting, and that's why a lot of people want to come here, but we also want to tell the story about law enforcement, especially unsung heroes. For instance, the IRS Criminal Investigation Group, which really is what brought down Al Capone in the early 30s, and we also the FBI. We want to talk about how surveillance is done and how wiretapping is done. We have actual wiretap recordings of mobsters talking that you can listen to.
Oh, right here?
Yes.
That's really cool. Well, what about, I guess, that, hard to explain, but that little kid that comes in here, I mean, what's kind of the approach, the family appeal to come to the museum? Is there something, you mentioned like the interaction with the CO2, being able to shoot the guns. Do you kind of try and appeal to some of the younger crowd as well? Or is this something more or less that you should be teenager to a senior maybe coming out here for the experience?
Well, you know, I'm not sure if children are able to use the use of force attraction, but we're trying to go after all ages, to be attractive to all ages. And there's education everywhere. I mean, you start on the 3rd floor and you read about the American immigrant experience from the late 19th century to the early 20th century, and about how a lot of organized crime, for instance, from Italy was imported from Italy to the United States, right? And also other groups, you know, Jews, Poles, Irish, and how they came from their original countries, and they were impoverished, and they were very much tempted to join street gangs and organized crime in order to make money instead of having to wait so long, for honest jobs, which was what the vast majority of people did do. They didn't turn to crime.
Which is why I guess I saw when I was coming in at the box office, you guys work with educators.
Oh, right. We have a very effective program where we have our educators going into middle schools and high schools, and they bring artifacts with them, and they talk about the history of the mob. They talk about the history of Prohibition, and it's been a very successful program for us.
All right, well, very cool. One of the last things I want to know. Has anybody ever affiliated with one of the families that actually gone through the museum, like maybe looked up a grandfather or ancestor, something that was associated with the mob?
Oh, sure.
That actually does happen?
Oh, yes. We had people come in and video their stories about their relatives and their memories about their relatives, their grandfathers or their fathers or whatnot, and what they remembered, what they did that was associated with the mob.
Wow.
And we've also had a lot of guests who used to be in federal prison but are now out, and then they can talk openly about what they did for the mob.
So it wasn't one of those where they're like, I can't believe what you're doing, you guys need to stay quiet with this. They actually enjoyed seeing everything.
Oh, sure, yeah. They like talking about it, and people love to listen about it. I mean, it's really amazing to hear some of the stories that actual mobsters tell about their lives, and even some of them who committed murders, who did their time and are now out and talk openly about it.
Wow. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time. Thanks
Sure.
a lot.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.